Love's the greatest energy we have, for ourselves and for one another. And that's what brought me back. So the message I take is, wow, that's it, man. We've got to lead with love to the best of our ability. And then, fill in the blanks on life, work, make money, do all those other things. That's all good. It's not so much what you do, it's how you do it, right?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to Flow Over Fear. Thank you so much for being here as we have a great show today, and we're going to have a great conversation with my guest. Few people actually experience the shift in perspective that comes from a near-death experience, and my next guest today has had his life transformed by one such experience, and it was the beginning of a journey of helping people to go from just living to being fully alive. Danny Bader is the best-selling author of Back to Life, the host of the Back to Life podcast, and a highly sought-after speaker, teaching people to invest in themselves, develop vision, and leverage useful thoughts to build momentum in the midst of monotony. He has become a trusted voice for such organizations as Marriott, Lincoln Financial, Comcast, Merck, and many others. I had the chance to personally hear him speak recently, and his story and message resonated deeply with me. And I wanted to have him on this show to talk about his story and share some of his Jackrabbit principles with us. And we'll get into that and talk a little bit about what that means. So we'll learn all about that. And I want to thank you for being here, Danny. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Adam. Thanks. I was certainly happy to cross paths with you as well. It's cool when kindred spirits connect like that.
Definitely. Well, that's the thrill of kind of being in this industry. I don't know if you feel this way, but like with being a speaker, talking on stage, you get to experience other speakers as well and learn a lot in the process. So
yes, one
of few professions. So I'd love to. And what I heard in your story when you were on stage was incredible. Mm-hmm. You had this near-death experience where you almost didn't know that you had lost your life. I'd love to kind of dig into that a bit and maybe talk a little bit about who you were before the accident and how you transformed.
Yeah, great. So I had the tragic accident, my buddy and I, when I was almost 29, so 30 years ago. And I was kind of drifting in life. I graduated college and I lived in Colorado, ski town, Aspen for a little while. And I had a girlfriend on again, off again, and I just didn't know that I wanted to commit. So I certainly was in kind of a state of flux in my life. And one day, at the end of the day, I was working for two brothers who had a roofing company. And me and one of the brothers were lowering a metal ladder, and we thought we were clear of the electric lines. As it turned out, we weren't. We hit them by probably about less than 2 inches was the margin of error. And it had an awful lot of electricity in it, about 7,000 or 8,000 volts. Wow. And that came down and went into both of our bodies, and it killed both of us. I was dead, according to an eyewitness there that worked CPR, the other brother. Probably, 6, 7, 8 minutes. He said somewhere in that range, you were dead. And then I came back to life. My friend didn't. So he was 36 with 3 kids, married, just a beautiful man, husband, father, son, brother, just great dude. So, as soon as the electricity hit me, I had this absolute calm and peace. It was as if I knew I was dying and I knew I was dead. I didn't have any anger, any fear or anything like that. And I saw the other brother coming down the ladder on the roof. So the one brother with me that got hit with the electricity, I didn't see him. I saw the other brother coming down because he heard the ladder hit it popped when it hit the wire. And I remember yelling to him, get your brother, get your brother. And then my soul, spirit, consciousness, I'm not tied to any label. I have my label for it, and the listeners might have their others. But there's an energy inside of us that really makes us go. That's what I believe. You have your heart and your brain and your lungs. and they're kind of, the engine of this body. You need them. And then there's that fourth energy, that divine energy. And the best way for me to describe it is it left. I felt myself leaving my body. And I was joined with, my source of this. I call it God. Again, people may call it something else.
Yeah.
And it was very hard to write about in the book because I was trying to describe in our English language an experience that is not describable in our English language. Yeah. So my editor said, just, keep going. We'll get it right. And I corresponded. I had a communication with this source, and I didn't want to come back. I had a choice to stay or come back, and I didn't necessarily want to come back. And because it was more beautiful than what I'd ever experienced here.
Yeah.
And I said, cosmically, I guess in thoughts or whatever, what about my mom and what about my girlfriend, Lisa, at the time? And as soon as I expressed that, I was back in my body. I was back in my body. It was like somebody plugged me in again. And then I heard Stu, the one brother, working on his brother. So I crawled up next to him and he said, "How are you here?" And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about, but I'll help." So I started doing mouth to mouth. Stewie was doing chest compressions. And then the paramedics and the police got there and they cleared us away. And I looked pretty good. They didn't know that I had been dead and back. And I went and sat against the fence, Adam. My feet were killing me. I looked down and I had little holes in my work boots. So I took them off. I had holes in my white socks with black around there. And then I had holes in my feet, 4 holes, 2 in each foot, one on each side. And there was no blood. So the interesting thing, and I use that term interesting because it's the only one I can kind of think of. Stu comes over to me then and is like, what happened? And I said, "I guess we hit the wire." And he said, "Yeah, you did. I heard it." And I said, "I know. I saw you coming down the ladder. I was yelling to you to get your brother." And he said, "What?" And I said, "I was yelling to you to get your brother." And he said, "No." He said, "You didn't say anything." He said, "I came to you first. You were laying on your side. I rolled you over. Your eyes are all rolled back, foam on your mouth. You were dead. I tried CPR for a few minutes. And then I just said to myself, we killed Dan. Dan's dead." So that's when he went and ran across the street and called for help. No cell phones back in 92, really.
Right.
So that's the quick version.
I mean, it's a story that a lot of people don't experience, of course, and a lot of people don't hear about. And I know there's a lot of questions that would come from that. Like, just thinking about that and kind of the tragedy that happens amidst that. I wonder kind of what was that first experience of, you had this jolt of electricity go through you. And I say that lightly because, I mean, I can't imagine. I stuck my finger on a light switch yesterday and got shocked, and it was, enough to set me back. But it's like getting 7,000 volts is incredible. How, when you say that you had the choice to come back, what does that look like? I mean, I know it's hard to explain in, I guess, terrestrial ways, but what does that look like?
Yeah, it really was that innate knowing, and it was far beyond how we know in this life.
Yeah.
And, certainly when I came back, we'll get into that journey because that was the most difficult part, moving through that. When I came back, though, I started to read more about near-death experiences, and I would certainly speak with people who had them and see if there were similarities. And a lot said that they had that choice to stay or go. And I mean, and that's the best way to describe it, really, for us to understand. And though I'm pretty much convinced that when I expressed love for my mom and my wife, my girlfriend, then my wife now, that's what put me back. So what I take away from that, right, why I'd offer this to the audience is, for me, it's love. Love's the greatest energy we have, for ourselves and for one another. And that's what brought me back. So the message I take is, wow, that's it, man.
Yeah.
We've got to lead with love to the best of our ability. And then, fill in the blanks on life, work, make money, do all those other things. That's all good. It's not so much what you do, it's how you do it. Right.
Right. And what does love look like to you? How does having had that perspective and that shift, how do we experience and show love in this world that would almost be like divine love that you're talking about? Yeah,
that's it. I think for me, it is just a connection to that something bigger, to God, and to know that is love and that we all have it in us. So to lead with love is to have that connection. One of the things I work on all the time, because I'm certainly not perfect, and is to just really see the divine spark in everybody, right? If somebody cuts me off in traffic, if somebody's rude to me in a restaurant, whatever, it just really look and say, man, in there is that same energy that's in me, and we're all kind of connected on this.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so, and how has your perspective changed from before? Like, so before you had this accident, what was the shift, and was it immediate? Did it take some time? Did you go through some emotional challenges after that?
Yeah. It took some time, brother.
Yeah.
It was not immediate. I had a really easy life up until that. I'm one of 8 children. My mom and dad are still alive.
Wow.
We had the crap that every family has to deal with.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we were a very cohesive group. We had a strong faith. My mom and dad instilled a strong faith in us. And, I played sports and I went to high school and I went to college and, I got grades and everything was pretty easy. And then it's not.
Right.
So I think my perspective shifted over time. And while the accident was a foundation for that, there was a lot of other events in life that continue to happen. When I got married, and then, marriage is difficult. So you go through some struggles there. Then you begin to lose some people. I lost a couple people younger, and then, I've lost some people now in our 50s and early 60s.
Yeah.
So I think it really secures for me that this beautiful life and this journey that we're on is not guaranteed. And, that's kind of the message, right?
Right.
You breathe about 23,000 times a day, and your heart beats about 100,000 times a day. And those bodily functions are automatic. They're not guaranteed. And that's pretty much the core message that I offer people is don't live like they're guaranteed. Because I have before, and every now and again I slip into it. Do not live like this life is guaranteed.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be a morbid thought,
Yeah.
For like a motivational speaker, people go, well, you're off to a hell of a start. I'm really motivated right now thinking about death.
Sure.
But that should be the empowering thought.
Yeah.
That should make you very aware and very present to how you're living and what you are creating, and how you're loving.
Yeah. Well, it's consistent with a lot of kind of the social media things that you do. I know you do your 1 minute wisdom every day on social media. That
it's usually 2 minutes or so.
2 minutes, yeah. I do the
1
same
minute
thing.
wisdom sounds better,
right? It draws people in. And a lot of that's based on Stoicism, which kind of goes along that philosophy that it's kind of breaking apart the expectations, so to speak, the expectations that we need to have a good life or that something needs to fall into place, and just really appreciating the now. Is that how you kind of gain that foundation of that, the idea of digging into the Stoic philosophy?
Yeah. I think after the accident, and I kind of always had the foundation, I was always curious about life, and I was never really driven by material things. Growing up, and I guess still not so much. I mean, you got to make money, for your family and retirement and kids and those things.
Right.
But as I read, I read an awful lot of books like you, and as I read, and I came across Ryan Holiday, who started that Daily Stoic, and I started to kind of dig into some of their thoughts, the Stoic philosophers. And again, they're not perfect. Their thoughts, though, were very consistent with mine. Marcus Aurelius, who they say was the last good emperor of Rome, right before all kind of the bad emperors came.
Right.
He has a great quote that I love. He said, "You could leave this life right now. Let that determine what you do and think and say."
Yeah.
So it's that notion of, man, this is really a gift. So you shouldn't think, oh shit, I could die right now. The other side of that is right now is a gift. And that's the side that should be empowering.
Yeah. 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 It's that's kind of what I've found too, is a lot of that philosophy is, I mean, the root of all of the personal development that we do right now is just in a different language, different messages. And so that's why I love that stuff. And I love what you post every day. And by the way, the book is called Back to Life. And so the book that you wrote is, it's your story, but it's based on the perspective of a different person. So you kind of shared it in that way. Can you talk a little bit about that on what you?
Sure. Yeah. Back to Life was the first one I wrote, and it's called The Path of Resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started to write it in first person. Years ago, I always thought about it. It's like the accident was 92. So this is like the early 2000s, almost 15 years afterwards. And I really struggled with writing the story true in real person because, I'm thinking, well, I'm writing a story about a tragedy where my buddy died, you know? And then I was talking to a writing coach and she said, well, why don't you just make up characters and base it on what happened to you and just weave that into a story.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, but then it wouldn't be true. And she said, well, parts of it would be true. And if anybody said what part's true, you just tell them. It's not as if you're deceiving them. And I had this breakthrough and I sat down, I made up this guy, Jake, and Jake is me. And the first line of the book is, why is there no blood? And he's looking right into the hole in his foot, in his left foot. And it's, a big hole, but there's no blood because it was all cauterized. And as soon as I did that, it kind of gave me permission to say, okay, I can base all this and kind of expand upon it and get my lessons out, through story, which is what I like to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, it's a really powerful way of telling it. I listened to, I guess, the first version of the audiobook that had a different name, but Back to Life, and that's available on Amazon and all that kind of good stuff too. And find that there.
Yeah. The first version was Back from Heaven's Front Porch.
Yeah.
And we could talk real quick about it. So I got the rights back. I had a small publisher that helped me with that. And then we parted ways and everything was fine. Great people. Because I was starting to build the brand of Back to Life. So I got the rights back and new cover, new title. And I actually wrote a last chapter too. The last time in Back from Heaven's Front Porch, the first version of the book, Jake's still 28 when you leave him.
Yeah.
He's home. And then in Back to Life, I wrote a chapter of his 50th birthday party. Oh, wow. And it kind of fills in a lot of blanks of different characters and all.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's so well written too. So
Thank
I just
you.
want to, it's a great storytelling. And that's what I love is the storytelling, especially around this, potentially tragic event and, and the aftermath of things that you don't think about, which a lot of us don't, have a chance to think about.
Yeah.
You not only
thank you for that. I got to thank my editor.
Sure.
I'm not Hemingway, man. I just kind of put it out there and then I got a good editor. So if anybody's thinking about writing a book and they have all these fears, right? Flow over fear. Don't be scared. Get it down. And then there's really a cool editor that can help you.
Yeah. Yeah. The editors are great. I agree with that. Having written my book, It was a mess. And like 6 edits later, it was something that was great.
Yeah. Right on.
But so I love the story and I mean, just kind of dealing with the tragedy of not just losing your own life, but then, losing the life of your friend and kind of seeing that dynamic. How did that make you think? A lot of these questions, I guess, that we have about death come from the place of the world. And I guess it's hard for a lot of us to imagine that the grief stays here. A lot of times it seems like. How did you originally think of, how did you really think the death of your friend, how did that affect you as far as, did you feel like you having been given the choice? Did you feel like he didn't choose to come back? Did you feel like there was something there? How did that resonate with you?
Well, initially there were two positions to lower this ladder.
Yeah.
One guy was standing on the ground behind the ladder, between the ladder and the house, and he would push it up straight. And then the other guy would kind of walk it out because it was a 28-foot ladder, but you couldn't collapse it. It was all one length because it had the motor on it. And I was in the position where he was. And, he was doing something at the end of the day. And I said, well, I'm going to get a drink of water. So I moved from that. And when I came back, he was there. And that was the position that, I think, the intensity of the shock was more.
Yeah.
Whereas it hit me and went into me and blew me off, he was more grounded to it. So I had a lot of guilt, it should have been me.
Sure.
And same thing here. I am 28, right? Trying to figure out life, not married, no kids.
Right.
And he's 36, married, 3 kids. So for me, it just didn't make sense. And that's where, my faith in God, I threw it out in the trash can for a couple of months for sure.
Sure.
Because I didn't believe that could happen.
Yeah.
So, in terms of death, I don't want to die anytime soon. I enjoy my life. I love my family. If somebody came and put a gun at me, I'm going to fight for my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that said, I'm not really scared to die.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like I said, I would, if somebody threatens you, you're going to, fear's going to show up and you're going to fight them. But having experienced what I experienced and having been with some people as they pass, most recently, my beautiful brother-in-law last May, so coming up on a year.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I always tell folks, man, don't be afraid. Mm-hmm. It is the experience that I had is beautiful, and there's no pain, and there's no It's it's a pretty cool next chapter.
Well, I mean, it's fascinating. It kind of gets to the root of not understanding. I guess on the worldly plane too. Maybe we're just trapped in our brains, but you're going through this chaotic experience of not only dying yourself, but seeing this chaos existing around you, and and you describe it as a beautiful experience. Is there any way that you could put into words what about it was so beautiful?
Yeah, well, the beautiful experience was because I was no longer in that tragedy of the world. I was no longer in that stress and anger and fear of the world. Where Stu was running around trying to figure out what happened to both of us. And then when I came back, we were, I was removed from that. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the beautiful is the word I use. It was a union,
Yeah.
I remember one doctor in the hospital described my experience as LOC, loss of consciousness. Mm-hmm. And I said, he was just this young resident, kind of arrogant dude. Mm-hmm. And I said, no, man, I've been knocked out before. I've blacked out by drinking. Trust me, this was not a loss of consciousness. I call it a UOC, union of consciousness.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because, a lot of times people refer to God as consciousness, right? The universe and consciousness.
Yeah.
So it was just the energy of me going back together.
Right.
Back. One time I described it to a person. I said, do you ever see, remember in chemistry class, we have mercury, and you'd have a lot of mercury, and then you'd have that one little drop of mercury over here. And then when it joins with the other one, it's no longer that drop. It's part of it. Yeah. And that's kind of what it was like, man.
That's powerful.
Yeah. That's what it was like.
Yeah. So, and when you came back, did that sense of love, of peace and everything you were feeling, did it go away, and were you immediately just kind of brought it back into chaos?
No, I did not bring it back with me. I think I did. I did. And it was like it was like if, you've ever had a jacket on and there's like a hidden pocket and you find it later and you find that's what it was. No, when I came back, man, I was just lost and stressed and, rock bottom, despair, hopelessness, regret, all those things, just trying to figure it out. I was in one hospital for just a quick visit, and then they choppered me to another one where I was for 10 days, and I get out, and my friend's, he's buried. Funeral's over.
Wow.
And I'm like, I remember when I didn't want to go to his grave for a little while. Then I finally went with my mom, and I'll always remember it's just me and her, man. And I just fell on my knees sobbing as soon as I got there, and she just knelt down and hugged me. I was just like, what the,
Yeah. Yeah. And you said you talked to other people who'd had similar near-death experiences. Was that kind of your way of healing through it? Or how did you get from that point of despair to where you're at now?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question, Adam. And no, it certainly did not happen right away. Yeah. It took some time. When I came back, I was just full of anger and regret and fear and uncertainty and blaming myself for what had happened. I was in one hospital for a brief period of time. Then they flew me to another one. And it took some time for sure. I think the pivotal moment, from the book, is I went to the Outer Banks of North Carolina about 3 or 4 months after the accident. And I was drinking a whole lot and, doing things that I shouldn't be doing, that just trying to make me feel better. And, they make you feel better in the moment, but you wake up with a new hangover and the same problem.
Sure.
It doesn't solve anything. And I was in the Outer Banks, and I was very close to taking my own life. And the way that I had planned it was I was going to buy a hose, drive my Jeep onto the beach because I love the beach, and put the hose in the tailpipe and through the window and just, leave the engine running. Mm. And I went into a hardware store one day to buy it, little hardware store down there in the Outer Banks, Kill Devil Hills. And I'm looking at hoses, and this little woman walks by, and I believe she was an angel. I never saw her again. Don't even remember what she said. She was like 80 years old, bright blue eyes, bright, big white teeth, smile, real suntan, wrinkled skin, like this little old beach lady. And she just said something that kind of snapped me out of it. And so I didn't buy the hose, but I did the next best thing. And I went out and got drunk. And I'm walking back to my motel room, and I see a phone booth, and I go in, call my mom, collect. And she says to me, "When are you coming home? We can't wait to see you." Mm-hmm. And I don't know why, man, but something clicked right there. And I said, I got to get through this. A little voice in my head said, "I wonder what it's going to be like when I get better."
Yeah.
And that to me was always that pivotal moment of kind of rock bottom, mm-hmm. where I said, all right, I got to get through this. Yeah. And it took some time. And for me, the way that I did is I focused on the future. I focused as much as I could. I'd slip back, but I'd focus on moving through this. Mm-hmm. I let everybody who loved me back in. And I started going back to church and having a faith and praying. And they were kind of the three things. Hold a vision of moving through this. Let your people love and support you, and believe in something bigger.
Yeah. So the love of your community comes up a lot on this show in terms of your network of people that help you through it.
Yeah.
Do you remember what the 80-year-old woman said to you in that store? You don't remember?
No.
It was powerful. It was powerful enough though to talk you off the ledge. That's powerful.
Don't even remember it, man. Yeah. She just kind of, one of those things.
Yeah. And you mentioned the faith that you started getting back into church and things like that. How has your faith changed? I mean, and your perception of God, what does that look like today?
Well, when you grow up Catholic with 8 kids, you think God's up there sitting on a chair. And, if you steal your sister's Oreo cookies, you're going to burn in hell. And I get that. Mine has shifted, that I believe God's everywhere.
Yeah.
God is in all of us. And God is a tremendous source of support, the ultimate source of support. So my relationship with God comes first. And then I've got my family, my wife, my kids, my friends, and other people.
Yeah.
But for me, it's that energy of love that we're all here. We're in this together. And at some point, that energy that came into us at conception is going to go back to its source.
Yeah.
And that's when we'll determine what heaven is. I didn't experience streets paved of gold, or, I didn't see any departed relatives. Now, maybe I had further to go. I kind of felt like I did.
Yeah.
That's why I called it Back from Heaven's Front Porch the first time, because I felt like I was just getting there. That's kind of how my faith is now. I just believe in Jesus and his teachings. And, he was the human version of that love. We all have it in us. Mm-hmm. He was it.
Yeah.
So I just work to live, as best I can, like he lived.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. I certainly come up short every day. And that's the beauty of coming back to life every day, right? Every day you come back to life. You open your eyes and your heart's beating and you're breathing. You say, okay, let's get after it. Let's do better than I did yesterday.
Yeah. And how do we better connect with God then? I've had these experiences in my life, where you just get caught up in everything. And, I believe in God too. I go to church, but there are just times where I just don't feel that connection.
Yeah.
How do we maintain that?
Yeah. You have to work on it, really.
Yeah.
You really do. And it's for me, it's prayer, it's journaling. Sometimes I'll listen to Christian music in the morning. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's Christian contemporary rock or whatever. It's not Catholic hymns.
Right.
And those things will work. I did some volunteer work. I've been thinking of doing some for a long time. I used to do some and I got away from it. And I went last week, some buddies of mine that go to this house down in Philadelphia in a really bad part where you're just dealing with homeless and alcoholics and addicts. And I just went for about 3 hours and helped make breakfast and serve 200 people. Mm-hmm. I was scooping out oatmeal. And man, when you look into the eyes of these people, it was pretty powerful for me. And I certainly felt the Spirit at work,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of ways, but you have to make your relationship with God, or however you interpret that. You've got to do the work, man.
Mm-hmm.
In life, that's one of the things I talk about. You have to do the work. And the work is, when I talk about my back to life principles, 5 principles, right? Jackrabbit.
Yep.
But the back to life principles is really what they are. Develop vision, seek support, know thyself, evolve, and be still. So through my journey, I said, and I didn't invent these. I just put my spin on them. They've been around forever. I just said, all right, when I went to a coaching school and I had to make a model of 5 very valuable principles. Mm-hmm. And I thought, all right, what did I do that took me from, the brink of self-destruction back to, engaged in life and fully alive.
Yeah.
And I just distilled it down and said, these are the things that I've come to understand that are really important for us.
Yeah. And can you share those again, those 5 principles of the Jackrabbit?
Sure. Yeah. So it's develop vision. Mm-hmm. So you always want to see where you're going. Be still, because I believe the Spirit lives in stillness, and I believe our thoughts can settle.
Yeah.
Know thyself, which is all around your values. For me, it's 3 things. Knowing yourself it's an onion, right? You could peel that thing back depending on who you are. If you're a parent, what's your communication style? If you're a leader, what's your style towards fostering innovation and all? For me, it's 3 things. What are your values, and are you living into them? Mm-hmm. What's your mindset? So what's the little voice or voices in your head telling you? And are they useful thoughts, right? I have an acronym HUT, hold useful thoughts.
Yeah.
And then the third one is your connection with God, Spirit. So know yourself in those 3 areas: values, mindset, and connection to Spirit. And then seek support and be support to other people. And the last one is to evolve, just to be curious, have the learner's mindset, and just trust that it's just a journey. This human life is a beautiful journey, and it's all going to be okay. It is,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's powerful. And one of the things you touched on there too, when you were talking about kind of getting that connection with God, was this element of service, serving in your community or however you serve. And I've always heard that a lot too, is that if we can get out of our own heads and we stop thinking in here, and we can get out and just serve, I think that's where the greater connection comes from. And if we learn from people like Jesus, whether it's the Son of God or a philosopher, he that's what he lived. That's,
and you can serve. That's a great point. You can serve every day, Adam, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have to go to a formal volunteer environment. It's great if you can, or if you do. Mm-hmm. You can just, so service is really just leading with love. So how can you lead with love when you go out to Home Depot to pick up light bulbs? Or how can you lead with love where, you go into a restaurant that's really jamming, and, the service is taking a little bit longer than you would expect?
Yeah. Yeah.
Lead with love, exude some patience, and maybe over tip a little bit. This waiter or waitress is, in all likelihood, they're grinding away in life.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of opportunities for us to lead with love. It doesn't have to be formal service.
Yeah. As someone who is a former bartender / server, I can tell you the value and the appreciation of being over tipped. It's just, you make someone, not just because of the money, but because you're just telling that person, look, you're doing great in this life. You're just doing good. I mean, so that's powerful. And so why Jackrabbit? I know you kind of, you brought up the concept of the Jackrabbit in the book too, I believe. And so where does that come from, and why are there no vowels?
Jackrabbit. So Jackrabbit is kind of what I call the model, although we're evolving away from that, and we'll call it the back to life principles, because it kind of brings everything together.
Yeah.
But the Jackrabbit of all the animals has, in the animal kingdom, when I was searching, vision's really important for me, right? That's what saved my life. Mm-hmm. When I said, I wonder what it's going to be like when I get better, when I visualized getting better, moving through this. And the Jackrabbit has really good vision because its eyes are back on its head and very high up.
Yeah.
So it has a full awareness of its whole environment, which is what's so needed for us as people. Mm-hmm. And no vowels, just because I thought it looked cooler on a T-shirt with no vowels,
It does. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. And you kind of talked about the vision part, and it's pretty profound that you say it saved your life. What is that importance there? How did you learn about that?
Well, it was really in reflection because,
Yeah.
I walked out of that phone booth and I was as desperate as a human being could be.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started to have that vision of, all right, let me see myself going home. Let me see myself going to get more treatment. Let me see myself. That's it. And then as I studied more, gosh, you look at any entrepreneurs, any athletes, so many people use that principle of visualization.
Yeah.
Seeing something before you do it. And I just think it's such a powerful principle that the common person, I don't mean this in a bad way, those of us that aren't entrepreneurs, we're not using that. I would say 95% of the people I deal with don't practice visualization.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very powerful concept.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice on how to practice that visualization or any?
Yeah, well, there's two really good ways. One is just to sit, close your eyes, mentally rehearse whatever you're going into. So if you've got to give a talk or a presentation, see yourself doing that. If you've got to run a race, if you got to hit a golf shot, see it, feel it, watch the ball land where you want, watch it roll. So play it out in your head first. Mm-hmm. And then an exercise that I do that's very well received that I've done, for, tens of thousands of people, is pick a point in time, usually a year from now, and go out to that point and then look back and ask yourself, if I had a really, really good year in all those areas of my life, my health, my wealth, my career, my finances, my spirituality, my fun, my travel, if I had a really good 12 months and I had to tell somebody what happened, what would that be? So if you're sitting having a cup of coffee or a beer with somebody, they say, how was your year? And you go, it was great. And they say, why? What would you say?
Yeah.
So what I do then is get them to write that out as if it already happened. And then my approach is put it as an all-day event on Friday in your calendar and begin to read. Why am I getting my butt out of bed? This is the big picture. Because now you're into a little bit of opposition with life. See, life doesn't want that, I don't think.
Yeah.
Life wants you busy, stressed out, and overwhelmed. So if you don't have any guide that says, no, life, this is really why I'm getting my butt out of bed. If you don't have it, then we just get busy. Life wins. And we get to the end of the year. Somebody says, how was your year? You go, well, it was okay, but I couldn't find the time to. And then you start naming all those things that you should be looking at every week.
Yeah. 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 That's a powerful perspective because it's a powerful distinction too, because a lot of times when we think about the future, we think of in shoulds. We think, I should do this, I should do that. Or,
right.
Or man, this thing is coming up and I don't know. But we often we're often not intentional about actually looking at where we want to be at that time and kind of visualizing it. I think that's a really, really great exercise on how we can do that. So thank you for sharing it.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful. I'd encourage people to check that out. And when you write it in past tense, here's the thing that it does too. Yeah. Our brain is wired for completion. When something comes onto our radar that we need to do, scientists call it open loop, right? And we love closing the loop. We love marking things off our to-do list. Yeah. So it's the same way here. I mean, there's a lot of people out listening right now that probably have done something that was not on their list. They go write it just so they can put a line through it.
Sure.
Because they feel better, right? The dopamine and everything's released. So if you write your year as if it already happened before it does, and you really stay focused on it, more of it will. Because now you're reading the story of your life and you're going, wait a minute, this has not happened yet. So now you're going, okay, what do I need to do? So it gets back to that powerful concept of action.
Yeah.
Without action, we're done. So you don't sit there and think about your year and everything happens.
Yeah.
That's your driver. That's your inspiration. That's your compass. And then action is what's going to help you work through it.
So what are we getting? And this may be a big question, but what are we getting wrong? Having had this perspective of seeing the end of life and having, come back from that and knowing what's, having some perspective on what's beyond, what are we getting wrong? What do we need to change about our own lives?
Yeah, it's good. I don't know that we're getting anything wrong.
Yeah.
I would just offer people, be more curious, listen, read, observe, and just understand. Again, just come back. If you wake up in the morning and you put your hand on your heartbeat and feel it and realize that thing's going to beat 35 million times this year for you. And that's not guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
So get clear, get your ass out of bed and say, okay, this is what I'm going to create. And this is how I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. This is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not about who you are. We all have our roles, right? Moms, dads, entrepreneurs, millionaires, whatever. It's not who. I always say move that W. So if you take the W from who and move it to the back, it's how. Move your W. Yes, go out and be in all those roles, hit your goals, make money, buy cool houses. All that's great. And I would pay attention to how are you doing that? What are the values? What words would people use to describe you? That's what I think is important.
That's great advice. And be more curious.
Mm-hmm.
And is that just kind of stepping out of your body for a moment, or out of your mind, and just asking questions instead of getting frustrated? Is that kind of how we do it?
I think so. Yeah. It's just looking. And sometimes you ask questions of people, and sometimes you just ask questions maybe about them to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you grow up with 8 kids, Irish Catholic, I some beliefs are formed that I don't want to serve me anymore. You know what I mean? Right. There's certain beliefs that are formed. There's certain stereotypes that you have about people. And I've, as I've gotten older, 30s, 40s, 50s, on the doorstep of 60, I don't want them anymore. Yeah. So you have to be curious. If somebody comes in and they're all tattooed up and they got, the big gauges in their ears and all, like, I don't understand that. And who cares if I understand it or not? That's them. Mm-hmm. And somewhere that's them, and that's who they are. And that's it's all right. So I just want to then I just want to see the divine spark and get to their soul and say, hey man, what's going on? Versus let how people are, push you back.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
As long as there's good energy, man, that's what I want.
Yeah.
Like you said, if the restaurant's busy and the server is a knucklehead with a negative attitude, I'll try to shift them around a little bit. But if that's their game, I'm out.
Yeah.
And I won't overtip them.
Yeah.
But if they go, hey man, we're really busy tonight and it's going to take longer and I wish I could get it out quicker for you. I'm going to do the best I can. So I appreciate your patience and their attention. That's what I want.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it's the spirit. I love that perspective of looking into the soul, not just outward appearances. I mean, the whole cliche of not judging a book by its cover, but there's a soul in every single one of us. I mean, there's an energy or whatever it may be. And, you've seen that on a deeper level, and that's powerful advice. And this has been huge. And just, kind of one of the last questions I would have is, I know there's a lot of people that maybe experience grief or pain of the loss of somebody else, somebody who may have passed away in their own lives. What would you say to someone who might be experiencing that grief?
Yeah, number one, and we're going through it, as I said. Now my brother-in-law passed. Yeah. It'll be a month coming up, and I lost a couple guys last year. For me, number one, they're okay. Mm-hmm. Their energy, their soul, their spirit, and for me, if they lived a good life, they're okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm not worried about them at all. It's all of us. And then the other thing is I talk to them all the time, all the time. I visit their graves, and Bruce died today in the accident. And then his brother Stu, who did CPR on me, and Stu lived for 20 some years after the accident. And he and I would always get together. We live in Philly, so we grab a beer and a cheesesteak. Mm-hmm. He passed 6 years ago. And then my brother-in-law, and they're all 3 in the same cemetery. So it's great, man. Yeah. I go up there. Sometimes I take a chair. Sometimes I don't. I'll just sit on the grass. But, I'll stop in, see Stu. Then I see Bruce. Then I see Bobby. And I feel better because I can feel them. Yeah. Adam, I offer people a lot of times when they're going through losing somebody, I'll just offer them, there's a fine line between here and there. A very, very fine line. And their energy and their spirit, while they're gone in the physical sense, I believe their energy and their spirit and their soul is still very much available to us.
Yeah.
And is a wonderful source of support.
Hmm. Now, you may have answered this already in one of the earlier questions, but I wanted to ask in a different way, so maybe the listeners could hear it too.
Mm-hmm.
But is there any way that we can experience heaven on earth, or that sense of peace on earth?
Yeah, I think just lead with love.
Lead with love.
You know what I mean? When you look into the eyes of another person, whether it's a newborn baby, it's an old person dying, it's a homeless person on the street. When you look and you can get that connection, and you both know, I think that's it.
That's a great life lesson to kind of to put a nice bow on this episode. This has been great and a great perspective on a topic that we haven't, that we don't talk about a lot. But and the final thing I'll ask you to is how what is the difference? I mean, is that the difference? Is love really the difference between just living and being fully alive, or is there something more?
I think that's the foundation for it. Mm-hmm. And by living, it's just going through the motions. Mm-hmm. You wake up, you're going through life, you're going through the motions. You're not appreciating the value of it. You're not appreciating the gift, the fragile nature of it. Being fully alive for me comes down to two things. It's really coming down to fulfillment, which means, am I getting out of life what I want?
Yeah.
Am I focused on it and getting it? And that's in all areas, right? That's relationships, it's love, and you don't necessarily have to have it, but are you moving towards it? Yeah. That's fulfillment. And then the other one is resilience. When the tough times and the struggles hit, how do I develop that energy of resilience to move through it? Yeah. And I've come to understand that those 5 principles, the back to life principles, they create fulfillment and resilience.
That's huge. That's powerful. And I love that idea of fulfillment, because really, if we're going to look back on our lives when we're on our deathbed or whatever that may look back, or we're even beyond it, we're looking back on this life that we've experienced. Are we fulfilled? Did we, and fulfillment does come from growing, from pushing beyond our comfort zones. Yeah. And that takes kind of leaning into fear. And it really does. Sounds like what you're saying today. We don't really have a lot to fear beyond this life.
No. Yeah. No, I always say if I'm gifted with consciousness while I take my last breath, I'm going to try to add a little smile on it.
Nice. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Danny. And your book is Back to Life. You've also got a number of other books. I Met Jesus for a Miller Lite. Taking the shit out of the show. It looks like I actually say the shit, or
yeah, you can. I couldn't put it on the cover of a book because my mom said I couldn't.
Of course,
she said so. I had to put the asterisks in there. Yeah, that's 7 short stories for navigating life's challenges.
Nice.
So all of my writings and podcasts, and certainly I appreciate being on with you because we're, like I said, we're kind of kindred spirits. Yeah, it's all coming back to how can we support people in creating those two things. Fulfillment, being fully alive, and moving through the tough times, trusting that you'll get through them.
Well, the Back to Life podcast is also a wonderful podcast. I'm a fan.
Thank you.
I've really enjoyed those episodes. And where can people find you?
Yeah, great. So the best place to go is the website, DannyBader.com. Mm-hmm. And then they can check out the podcast is there. The books are there. And if they're in an organization and they want to talk about maybe bringing me in for a keynote or a workshop or something, we could discuss that as well. Yeah. They can just email me through the website.
That's great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Like I said at the beginning, I had a chance to see you speak. You're an amazing speaker and took a lot of notes. It's a powerful message you have to share, and a lot of great lessons for any organization. So reach out to Danny, find him at DannyBader.com. Danny, thank you so much for being here and having the willingness to share your message.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Adam. You're doing great work. Keep it up, brother.
Thank you, sir. Talk to you soon.
All right. Peace.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.